Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're cracking open a self-help classic, one that's sold millions of copies. Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff.
By Richard Carlson.
Exactly! Richard Carlson. And I know what you might be thinking, another self-help book.
Right.
But trust me, this one is different. You've come to the right place to get the best strategies, and that's exactly what we're going to uncover today.
You're right to be excited about this one. This book, even decades after it came out, still resonates with people because it just offers practical wisdom for a less stressful life. And, the author, Richard Carlson, was a PhD, so he wasn't just spouting feel-good fluff.
Right. A PhD in not sweating the small stuff, sign me up. But seriously, he gives you 100 strategies.
100.
Like, who has time for that? Nobody. So we are going to distill those most impactful ones down for you. And I have to say that first one really resonated with me, especially with the chaos of daily life.
Absolutely. I mean, he kicks it off with a concept that I think we all struggle with, and it's making peace with imperfection. Think about that, that quest for the perfect presentation at work, or even just a perfectly organized sock drawer.
Oh, tell me about it. My sock drawer could use a therapist at this point. But seriously, it's like this constant pressure to achieve some unattainable level of perfection.
It is, and that's exactly what Carlson wants us to realize. He says that it's this striving for this impossible ideal of perfection that's actually preventing us from finding true inner peace. He says we need to shift our focus. Instead of, striving for perfection, we cultivate contentment and gratitude for what is.
Okay, I can get behind that. So instead of stressing over a messy desk, maybe I should just be grateful I have a desk in the first place. Okay, I'm starting to see the light here. But here's the thing. For a lot of us, letting go of perfectionism, it can feel like we're giving up on success. That fear that if we're not constantly striving, we're slacking off. It's that whole go-getter mentality that's so ingrained in our culture.
And Carlson addresses that head on. He playfully challenges this idea that being relaxed equals being lazy or unproductive. He actually argues the opposite. He says that frantic thinking, the constant need to be on, can actually drain our energy and block our creativity. He even gives examples of high achiever CEOs, famous authors, even parents. Incredibly successful, yet incredibly peaceful.
Wait, hold up. So you're telling me I don't have to choose between being zen and getting things done? That's a game changer.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot, right? Where you're fully engaged in your life, but you're not being ruled by stress and anxiety. And that brings us to another brilliant strategy from the book, the snowball effect. Have you ever noticed how one little worry, being 5 minutes late, can spiral into a full-blown anxiety attack about the entire day?
Oh my gosh, all the time. It's like that moment you realize you forgot to pick up milk from the store, and suddenly you're questioning your entire existence as a functioning adult.
Yes, that's exactly it. But Carlson gives us this simple yet powerful tool to stop that snowball before it even gets rolling. He calls it early recognition. The sooner we can catch ourselves in those negative thought spirals, the easier it is to stop them from gaining momentum.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? Do we just shout stop at our brains every time we have a negative thought?
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that, but Carlson, he recommends this brilliantly simple strategy. Keep a notepad by your bed. So if you wake up with those anxieties swirling, you just jot them down.
Oh, okay.
And that allows you to kind of, release those worries, trusting that you can address them in the morning rather than letting them steal your peace throughout the night.
So it's kind of like giving your brain permission to relax, knowing that you've got a plan to deal with those worries later. I love that. It's such a simple yet practical tool. It's like, okay, brain, I hear you. We'll deal with that overflowing inbox in the morning, but for now, it's chill time.
Exactly. And that, I think, is what makes Don't Sweat the Small Stuff so effective. It's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about giving us these concrete, actionable strategies to actually change the way we respond to stress.
It's about taking those aha moments and turning them into, aha, I can actually do something about this moments. Speaking of which, one of the strategies that really spoke to me was about approaching challenging situations with more compassion.
Yeah, compassion can be a game changer. Carlson, he has this great anecdote about his daughter interrupting his work. And initially, he feels that familiar twinge of annoyance.
Oh, I remember that story. And I think we've all been there, right? That feeling of, ugh, not now. When you're in the zone and someone needs your attention.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Carlson, he makes this conscious effort to see the innocence in her actions. He realizes that she's not intentionally trying to disrupt him. She just wants to connect.
It's so easy to forget that sometimes, isn't it? We get so caught up in our own agendas and forget that everyone else is navigating their own world too.
And that's where the compassion comes in. Because when we can look beyond the behavior, right, and see the human experience beneath it, it changes everything. Think about a time you were frustrated with a slow cashier or a frustrating coworker. What if, instead of getting annoyed, you tried to tap into a sense of compassion?
It's like that saying, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always.
Exactly. And that compassion, it doesn't just benefit them, it benefits us too. It unlocks patience, understanding, and ultimately a greater sense of inner peace. And speaking of inner peace, Carlson has this amazing reminder that I think we all need to hear on repeat.
Please tell me life is not an emergency, because sometimes I swear my to-do list feels like an evacuation plan.
You got it. Carlson dedicates a whole chapter to reminding us that life is not an emergency. He even shares a story about an overwhelmed homemaker who ends up being prescribed anxiety medication. It really highlights how often we create these self-imposed emergencies that just totally steal our joy and peace.
It's true. It's like we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle that we forget to actually live. But Carlson, he encourages us to really question the urgency we assign to tasks, right? He reminds us that an empty inbox doesn't necessarily equal a fulfilling life.
Exactly. And sometimes just asking ourselves, is this really an emergency, can be enough to shift our perspective. It's about finding that balance between productivity and enjoyment, between achieving our goals and savoring the journey. Now, this next strategy is a bit of a head scratcher at first, but stick with me, Carlson. He encourages us to embrace boredom.
Wait, what? Boredom? In a world of endless entertainment and notifications, that feels almost revolutionary.
Right, it seems counterintuitive. But Carlson, he argues that boredom can actually be a wellspring of creativity.
Yeah.
By resisting the urge to constantly fill our time with distractions, we create space for our minds to wander, to explore, to make unexpected connections.
It's like giving our imaginations permission to go on a field trip. Remember when we were kids and boredom often led to the most epic adventures? Building forts, creating imaginary worlds, those were the days.
Exactly. And that's the energy that Carlson wants us to tap back into. He argues that by embracing moments of boredom, we open ourselves up to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of experiencing the world.
It's about rediscovering the magic in the mundane, finding those moments of quiet joy and inspiration in the everyday. It's like a mental palate cleanser. And speaking of shifting our perspective, Carlson, he introduces this really powerful exercise where he encourages us to imagine the people in our lives as both tiny infants and 100-year-old adults.
That one really stuck with me. It's such a powerful reminder of the shared human experience. When we see someone through the lens of their entire lifespan, their innocence, their vulnerability, the wisdom they've gained, it becomes so much harder to hold on to anger or judgment.
It's like looking at a tapestry and seeing all the threads that connect us from the beginning to the end. And speaking of connection, one of the things Carlson stresses is the importance of truly listening to others.
Yes, not just waiting for our turn to speak, but really truly listening with the intent to understand. It's a skill that takes practice, but can transform our relationships.
Absolutely. It's about putting aside our own agendas and really trying to see the world through the other person's eyes. And you know what? Sometimes we might even learn something new along the way.
Speaking of learning new things, I think it's time we introduce another one of Carlson's gems, the idea of patience practice periods.
Okay, tell me more about this. I'll admit, patience isn't always my strong suit.
Me neither.
Yeah.
But Carlson, he suggests that patience is like a hustle that gets stronger with practice. So he encourages us to create these patience practice periods, intentionally putting ourselves in situations where we have to exercise our patience muscles.
So waiting in a really long line or dealing with a frustrating technical difficulty?
Exactly. And the more we practice patience in these small everyday moments, the more equipped we are to handle the bigger challenges that life throws our way.
It's like training for a marathon, but instead of physical endurance, we're building emotional resilience. And speaking of handling challenges with grace, Carlson has some really insightful advice on how to deal with disagreements.
Yeah. Instead of immediately jumping to defend our own position, he suggests trying to see the other person's point of view first.
That's a really interesting concept, trying to understand someone else's point of view, before defending our own. It sounds almost counterintuitive, especially in the heat of the moment when, our defenses are up.
It definitely is. It's a skill that takes practice. but it can be incredibly powerful. Because often, when we can truly understand where the other person is coming from, it helps to soften our own stance and opens the door for a more constructive conversation.
It's like building a bridge instead of digging in our heels. And speaking of powerful perspectives, Carlson also suggests this exercise where we imagine ourselves at our own funeral.
Ooh, yeah.
It sounds a bit morbid, but it's actually a brilliant way to gain clarity on what truly matters in life. Imagine, like, listening to the eulogies, hearing people share their memories of you. What would you want them to say?
Yeah. What kind of legacy did you leave?
Exactly. It's like holding up a mirror to our lives and asking ourselves, am I living in alignment with my values? What kind of legacy am I creating? It's a powerful reminder to focus on what truly matters.
It is. It's about living with intention, making choices that are aligned with our deepest values. And speaking of making choices, Carlson, he also encourages us to embrace the reality that life isn't always fair.
It's like that saying, life's not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain.
Exactly. Because when we can accept that we can't control everything, it frees us from the suffering of resentment and expectation.
Yeah.
It allows us to focus on what we can control, our own responses and choices.
It's about finding that place of inner peace, regardless of our external circumstances. And speaking of inner peace, there's this one practice that Carlson talks about that always makes me smile, writing a gratitude letter.
Oh, I love that one.
It's such a beautiful practice, isn't it? Taking the time to express our appreciation for someone who has touched our lives in a meaningful way. And it doesn't have to be someone we know personally either. It could be a teacher from our past, a mentor, even a historical figure we admire. It's about acknowledging the good that others have brought into our lives.
And the act of writing itself can be incredibly therapeutic. It allows us to slow down, reflect, and connect with our own feelings of gratitude.
Plus, it's like a gift that keeps on giving. Because who wouldn't love to receive a heartfelt letter expressing appreciation? It's a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Now, this next one might sound a little out there, but I'm intrigued, Carlson. He encourages us to lower our tolerance to stress.
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Especially in our culture that often glorifies busyness and burnout.
Mm-hmm.
But Carlson argues that by lowering our tolerance to stress, we actually become more attuned to our own needs and limits.
So instead of pushing ourselves to the brink of exhaustion, it's about recognizing those early warning signs and taking steps to prevent burnout before it happens.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing self-care, setting boundaries, and recognizing that our worthiness isn't tied to our productivity.
It's about giving ourselves permission to rest, to recharge, to say no to demands that drain our energy. And speaking of energy drainers, Carlson has some really insightful advice on how to deal with those nagging worries that keep us up at night.
Oh, tell me about it. He encourages us to ask ourselves this one powerful question. Will this matter a year from now?
It's such a simple question, yet it can be so effective in shifting our perspective, because often when we step back and look at the bigger picture, we realize that what we're stressing about is actually pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
It is. It's about choosing our battles wisely, letting go of the things we can't control, and focusing on what truly matters. And you know what? Sometimes what truly matters is allowing ourselves to simply be present and enjoy the simple things in life.
That reminds me of Carlson's encouragement to, look for the extraordinary in the ordinary. It's about finding joy in those everyday moments, the things we often take for granted.
Yes, a warm cup of coffee on a chilly morning, the laughter of loved ones, a beautiful sunset. Life is full of simple pleasures if we just take the time to notice them.
It's about cultivating a sense of wonder and appreciation for the beauty that surrounds us, even in the midst of chaos. And ultimately, that's what Don't Sweat the Small Stuff is all about. It's about finding those pockets of peace and joy in the everyday and learning to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs with more grace, more compassion, and a whole lot less stress.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you come away feeling inspired, empowered, and maybe just a little bit more peaceful. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Thanks for tuning in to the audio podcast. You're here with my friend Jordan, and I'm Ashley. We hope today's episode brought some light to your day. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. Share it with a friend and keep spreading the good vibes. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep shining.